good morning, good afternoon, whatever time it is for everyone. Let's wait till everyone gets here. Today we're gonna look at some of my personal work. So today we're gonna take a look at some of my personal work as I continue to answer your event photography questions or any photography questions you guys have in general. If you're not an event photographer, no worries. I've done a bit of everything until I kind of decided to specialize in what I do. So I'm going to attempt to show you guys some footage of my trip to Mexico, in which I continued to work on one of my projects. I worked on it in Mexico City. What is the name of that town? I think it's not Oaxaca, that's in Peru. I'm blanking on the name, but I traveled around Mexico. Here's me. So I'm still setting everything up for you guys. Let me know if you're there.
We live in
We'll get started in just a second. Let's take a look at some work. I'm going to pull that up right now. How's everyone doing? Okay, so how long have we been streaming? Okay. All right, so you guys know I've talked, if you've been watching my channel, if you've been watching my live streams, a lot of this is going to be repetitive to you, but it's important that I kind of make sure I bring everyone in on this and they know where I'm coming from and what my thoughts are, and I don't want to presume anything. So, as a professional photographer, let's first talk about how I got into professional photography. I got into it because I love photography and I hate the corporate world. I was fueled by my hatred for corporate life as much as I was by my passion for photography. And so basically, I had no choice. There was no choice in the matter. I had to pursue this. But the ultimate goal of me pursuing professional photography was not to be a professional photographer. That was not my dream. My dream isn't to create for other people. My dream is to create for myself. And my dream is ideally in some way I'm helping someone in my community or anything. And I'm not saying that my work is like the greatest thing ever to ever happen. But what I'm saying is, like, if you guys saw my work with my dog, if that makes someone smile, I feel like I did a good job, you know? I want to somehow have some sort of an impact on my community for the better. This series we're going to look at isn't so much, although, you know, it did have an impact within the community that I shot it in, but we'll talk about that. Really, what I want to talk about is how important it is to create for yourself. So as I was saying, I started professional photography because I couldn't hold a job I didn't want to, and I realized I could make a living off of photography and be closer to what I loved. Ironically, I ended up shooting a lot less for myself for a very long time, and it took me some time before I started shooting again for myself. The first series I did, big series, was the Mick and Bricks series, Us Doing Things, which I shared, I believe, yesterday. Good morning, Casa. Good morning, Douglas. Good morning, Lyric Tenor. I'm glad to have you guys again. This series that we're looking at today, I shot a few years later. I started this, well, here we're actually looking at the very first photo I ever shot. I've talked about where I think my creative process comes from, or what my creative process is, and I think it's different for everyone, and that's why I'm trying to put together an episode with an actual psychologist, Dr. Ali Mattu, a college roommate of mine, and really big now. You'll see him on TV shows, you'll see him on his YouTube channel, and I'm gonna actually link his channel in the comments here, if I can find it. And I've been talking to him about doing a video on where creativity comes from and what is the process. And I want to get his point of view as a psychologist who can definitely talk about it. I can't talk about it in those terms. I can only talk about it in my own terms, in what I believe my creative process comes from. So I'm working on that with him. If you guys want to check out Ali's channel, it's The Psych Show, but I am about to link it. Really great guy, awesome person. It's kind of funny. We both ended up running a YouTube. He's actually doing it full time now. He was a working psychologist, PhD, for many, many years, and when he relocated recently, he decided to just pursue YouTube. So good for him. Ultimately, you're able to help a lot more people on YouTube, I think. You don't have that one-on-one interaction, but you're able to help a lot of people. So there's a link to his channel. I will be discussing either on his channel or mine. I'm not 100% sure, but we are going to discuss creativity. So today I'm going to focus on my own process, and we're taking a look right now at that first photograph I ever shot that ultimately became part of a larger series. And for me, I'm usually working very intuitively when it comes to my creative process. I don't have a plan. I don't even know why I do it, at least at first. So with the Mick and Bricks series, I shot this like very sad, lonely photo of me at my desk and then him at my desk. And I didn't really know what I had yet. And I started talking about it with a friend who really liked the photo, and it was in that conversation I'm like, oh my god, there's a photo series here. And I didn't even know what that photo series was necessarily about initially, and it eventually developed into what it became. So here is the first photo of a series I ended up calling People Who Train. It's a photo series of jiu-jitsu practitioners, and it's a mashup of their identities. It's exploring this dual identity, or I don't know how to even phrase it, multi-identity that we all have. Jiu-jitsu is a big part of people's lives that train. You know how they make jokes about the CrossFit cult? Jiu-jitsu is kind of similar in a lot of ways, and especially when it's a new love for you, you talk about it a lot. Like, I don't typically talk about it. I talk about it on my channel because I know there's a lot I can relate to jiu-jitsu when it comes to photography. I know that seems like a weird connection, but there is, and so I talk about it. But I don't wear jiu-jitsu shirts or walk around in MMA shorts or any of that. Thank you for the audio tip. I'm just going to move the mic close. That should have helped. Thank you. I actually had the mic turned down because I was tinkering around with playing video again. So anyway, as I was saying, I work intuitively, and here's the first shot. I want to continue. I know I get stuck. So I don't know why I took the shot. I just put on my suit like I was going to work, which, you know, I usually would wear a suit back then. At least I shot more weddings too back then, I think. And I just threw my jiu-jitsu jacket over it, and I didn't know what the photo was about. I posted it on Facebook back when I had one, and it really connected with people. Like, it seemed to be like a meme that encompasses an idea in a photograph, and immediately I'm like, I've got to keep shooting these. So we're gonna take a look. It's not entirely in order because I have to reorganize my files. So I'm gonna, if I go to all types, you can see, like, I believe this is the second photograph I ever shot for People Who Train. This is a friend of mine who was training at our gym while in school, visiting from, oh boy, sorry. I think the United Arab Emirates. I hope I'm not making a mistake. I think that's where he's from. And he was studying engineering, training with us. Really cool guy. And so this is the second one I believe I shot. Let's go back to the Photoshop documents. Sometimes it was very simple and straightforward. It was just about their dual identities or multi-identity. Like here we can see it's very self-explanatory. In and out worker by day, jiu-jitsu practitioner at night. Eric has his office job. This is one of my oldest jiu-jitsu friends. We go back from almost the beginning, the first year I started training. When I lived in Peru, we emailed each other every day and just talked about jiu-jitsu and philosophy, and always think fondly of that time. Jiu-jitsu practitioner and law school professor. the time he had just graduated Pepperdine. Mom, jiu-jitsu practitioner. I think she was a partial gym owner. And of course, guys, I'm going to answer your questions. If you have any event photography questions, put them in the comments and then I'll get to them. Erin Hurley, she actually fights now. I think she is a professional fighter on top of everything. I forgot what you call this type of knitting. Also did some photography, some writing, a lot of traveling. So here we mixed up everything. This guy's a personal trainer, or yeah, I believe a fitness instructor, or actually physical assist. I'm not exactly remembering. I think a PA. Something to do with finance here. One thing I've discovered is that in doing this project, I had a disproportionate amount of people in the medical industry, and the only thing I could connect it to was that people that have high stress jobs often are drawn to jiu-jitsu as a way of relieving stress. So there were a lot of doctors, a lot of nurses. So cosplayer, boxer, jiu-jitsu practitioner. Arun, he is a gamer, fitness guy, a little bit of everything. Junk food fanatic, so he brought a box of donuts. So here's one of the photographs I was most proud of, and I want to talk about why. First, it really resonated with the community, but big things came out of it. Things that were much bigger than my little project. Like, I got to travel around, really the world. I went to Europe, I went to Mexico, different places in California. But this photograph turned into almost like a movement. And in it, I would have all these practitioners do a write-up and talk about why they trained. And some would keep it very simple, like dude, I train because it's fun. And some people had really thoughtful, long explanations about why they train. And this is Chris Lucas, who was I believe he served 2 terms in Iraq, combat medic, and he was very open with his PTSD and how jiu-jitsu became like a spiritual practice for him. It was a way that allowed him to spiritually cope with PTSD in ways that no treatment was able to. And when he shared this, or when I shared this photo and then he reshared it, there was like an outpouring of support, and people like him, or people that hadn't considered training as a therapeutic measure. And they all, and he started a nonprofit actually to help veterans train for free. And so the biggest thing that came out of this project was not because of me, in all honesty. And I'm happy. That's great, you know, like, I'm just a photographer and I'm exploring identity. It is what it is. I didn't think so highly of it, but what came out of it because of this one photograph, if it helped one person, I'm really happy. And then his son. Jiu-jitsu becomes like a family practice for a lot of people. A lot of people get drawn in because of their kids, and then they're like, wow, this looks like fun, and they start training. There's a guy who actually trains at my gym. He's probably 74 now. Trains hard, like really hard. Harder than like almost anyone. I don't know how. He came in because of his grandson. If you're just joining us, we're taking a look at some of my work. We're looking at the People Who Train project. It's a project about jiu-jitsu practitioners, and it's exploring the tell me if this is a fake word, multifacetedness of identity. I'm of course also answering your questions that you guys might have about event photography or any type of photography. And additionally, while I have you guys, I want to thank you for your support. I have a new Patreon supporter. I don't know if do we call them a patron? Okay, we just call them a patron, I think. So I want to thank all of you guys. I'm actually pulling it up. I want to thank you guys by name. But I'm not 100% sure how I even quickly pull that up. You guys know who you are. I don't know some of your names. You know, you guys use a handle. It's a little weird. You know, you guys know me. I'm pretty open about my life. Pretty open with everything. You guys know my real name. But thank you, Linda Allen. Thank you, AC. Jamil or Jamil, I'm not sure. Let me know if you're watching. Gentatsu, of course. Quentin. Joe, appreciate you. He shared photos with me recently. I think I got everyone. Thank you guys. It means a lot to me. I thought I was actually making like a little bit of money from these live streams. Because the first one I made like $7. I'm like, ooh, I made $7, you know? I'm like, oh, it's just like, even if it's a low amount, like it's something, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not doing this for short-term gain, but like the idea that I was making like $7 was so thrilling to me. And then I realized it was a super sticker, and it was jumbled in with the ad revenue. And I think that it was actually for $10, and Google took like 3 out of it, which was ridiculous. But scuba diver, medic, or I think he's a EMT. This guy is also an actor. Good guy. Like, it was really probably my problem as a person is that I genuinely really value connection, and then I kind of get stuck in my habits of just like staying home, you know, and not leaving my house and not connecting with people enough, and not, you know, working hard enough to reach out to people. And I'm trying to change that. Wow. So here, this is kind of cool because we have an actor. This photo's taken on new meaning for me because I actually took classes at, that's a comedy manual for Upright Citizens Brigade. I actually took a class there. I wanted to really challenge myself. I wanted to not be the expert in the room, and not to like, that's not, I don't like how that comes off, but you know, like I'm usually teaching photography and people are looking at me. I've done jiu-jitsu for a very long time, so I'm a black belt. People are looking at me as like an expert or advanced person. I wanted to do something where I was completely out of my depth, and it was the most challenging thing I ever did. And I think that's really important to do, you know, get out of your comfort zone. So it also helps me be a teacher in being the student again, you know. It helps me get a perspective of what it's like. So that's kind of cool to see that now. And now we have a date. This is not one of the first photographs I did, but I think I started the project in 2013. She's does a lot. She's an activist, works in the adult industry, not as an actor. Great artist. Met a lot of artists. Some people gave me artwork like as gratitude. Like I've shot their portrait, they would give me artwork, which was really cool. I remember reading the Tao of Jeet Kune Do. You don't have to be into martial arts to read Bruce Lee's philosophy, by the way. It's pretty interesting. Fighter, jiu-jitsu practitioner, delivery man, teacher, paintball enthusiast. When it comes to shooting portraits, unless I'm doing like a photo essay, I'm usually looking to create something where I'm usually looking for the image that I feel defines everything. It's like a defining moment. So I might shoot a bunch of portraits of someone, but there's ultimately one where I feel like it fully captures everything, and then I don't share the rest. Rarely did I ever share the rest. Even if there were 2 really great shots, I worked hard to figure out which one I thought was the best shot, and then that's the one I would share. So this is one of the first portraits I made in Mexico City. Someone reached out to me, became a good friend of mine. Her and her husband owned a gym, and they invited me to stay with them as I shot people who train portraits. So I mostly did them in Mexico City. I hit up a couple of gyms there. Then I went to another city. I think, I can't remember where I shot this one, somewhere in Mexico. This guy, I believe, was a philosophy professor. One thing I found is jiu-jitsu people tend to be highly educated. They're not knuckleheads by any means. Like, they're usually educated, intelligent people. So comment. Started the same time as you. Well, you mean with the 2014 comment? That's when I started the project. I mean, I started the project in 2013. I've been doing professional photography since I moved back to America, and that was like 2008, into like pretty much the recession, so it was really hard. But yeah, I've been doing professional photography for, I guess that would be over 12 years now. And I've been doing photography. I've always had the interest. I wish I was able to explore it younger, but my first camera was a Fisher-Price camera, and I still have it. It shoots in an outdated film format. You can't really, you could probably hack your way into using it, but it's not easily used. I can't just buy the film off the shelf kind of thing, but I still have it. And then I started exploring it finally in high school. All my friends took not a professional class. They took a college class while in high school. We were able to take classes at the local community college, and I didn't, but I was so envious, and I did all their assignments along with them, even though I wasn't in the class. So I snuck into the dark room, and from that moment, it was like decided, you know. Here's an example of, I'm shooting with studio lights, but in order to get that flame, I have to tinker with my shutter speed in order to capture that light. So it was a challenge. This guy had a great look. Elevator repairman. If you zoom in, you can see he's got a black eye. When it comes to my projects, I'm usually, there's an ebb and flow. It's almost like it builds up the desire to create, and then when it comes out, it's like a flood. And so I worked on this pretty intensely for a couple of years, a year and a half. I worked on the Making Bricks series intensely for a month. Then I picked it up here and there. I did street photography every day for like 8 hours a day for a while. But right now I'm in one of those lulls where I'm not creating for myself very much. I've been doing a lot of YouTube, but I haven't been creating as much as I'd like. So again, if you guys have any event photography questions, let me know. Happy to answer them. It doesn't have to be limited to event photography. Let me know if there's any technical issues, like if it's buffering okay and that kind of thing as well. It's really hard for me to gauge. Like, I'm looking at a different monitor. It does look like the images aren't really rendering properly, which is actually not any good. So let me know. This gentleman is an exterminator. You know, I can't remember what this guy does. So this gym actually had a lot of like repairmen, that kind of thing. But typically they were doctors, lawyers, that kind of thing. Seemed disproportionate in that sense, but Jiu-Jitsu captures a wide array of people. This guy is a like a distributor of alcohol, so he had fun with it. He's a gym owner, but he does other things too. Okay, so Linda is asking if I do a single project until it's complete, or do I do multiple projects at the same time? And I would say until it's complete. And I would define complete by until I feel like I've explored it to my content. Like until I feel like whatever it is I had to say with the project has been said. I tend to be someone who focuses intensely on one thing. I love finding like the nuance of a challenge, and I love just fully exploring something to exhaustion, rather than dabble here and there. So that's definitely more who I am. So no, I don't usually have multiple projects, and usually I shoot until one day I know it's done, and then it's done. This project I shot until it was done, and then I just there's everyone's unique and everyone's different, and I know there's more stories to tell. But when I started to feel like, then I was just like, again, you guys know I hate feeling like I'm a monkey with a camera. You know, anytime I feel like I'm a robot or a machine and I'm churning out these portraits, then I get less interested. And it did start to feel a little bit like that. Even though everyone's unique, everyone's interesting. There were multiple, you know, no one's like, I'm not going to be like, oh, I already photographed a doctor, so I'm not going to photograph you. You know, it's not like that. But I feel like there was something I wanted to say, and I did, and now I don't have anything more to say about it. I've considered doing a photo series about jiu-jitsu again, but I have not, because I haven't found the exact way I'd like to do it. I think it would involve something with film and maybe some medium portrait photographs. Here's the other thing. A lot of people asked if they could continue this project in their own country if I couldn't make it. And I had to say no. And, you know, it's like, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not very egoic about the project where this was my idea, you know, and no one else can do it. But I would tell them, like, I would encourage you to find your own way to, like, explore the topic, you know? Like, I did put a lot of work on my own dime, by the way. I did a Kickstarter to help fund it, and I made some money from that, but mostly I spent money to do this project. I didn't make money from it, and I didn't love the idea of other people doing it. I didn't love the idea of potentially being confusion about the project. Some people, you know, everyone understood it at a different level too. Some people's takeaway was like, oh yeah, it's really cool how, you know, you photograph people with their jiu-jitsu belt on. Like, they didn't really understand I was trying to explore identity, and some people understood it at a deeper level in what I was trying to explore. And I didn't want someone attempting to do the photography if they didn't really understand, we weren't on the same page. And I didn't want it to become like a kitschy service. I wanted it to actually be like some sort of artwork. That said, I'm not pretending this is like high art and the greatest thing I've ever done. It is what it is. Like I said, whole families train together. Was one of the more interesting people I photographed. I found it a lot harder to do these live streams every day than I thought it would be. Actually, I didn't think it would be easy, but I've been, you know, I'm starting to feel better, actually. I woke up starting to feel better, but I haven't been feeling well lately. And like doing these every day, like, was difficult to maintain because of course I have other obligations. And then I also, you know, I haven't been promoting it well. So it's like, we only have 8 watching now. That's okay. But I should have done a better job of getting the word out. I only set up the live stream like minutes before I went live. Oh, this one's cute. I believe this guy is a pastor. She was interesting. She was a judo black belt, jiu-jitsu blue belt, old school punk rocker, and like a teacher. I think an English teacher. Nurse? I think a nurse. This gentleman wanted to use the People Who Train project as a platform to discuss, he had cancer and wanted to talk about it. At this point, I started changing up how I shot the project a little bit. One thing I want to talk about when it comes to having a project is that I've talked about how I work intuitively, initially. And it's a means of exploring, my artwork is a means of exploring something I have to say that's more at the subconscious. And through that exploration, it hits a conscious level where I then understand what it was exactly I wanted to explore. But what I really encourage you guys, I don't think you need to work the way I work. But if you try to conceptualize everything, you try to create the parameters of the project you want to pursue all beforehand. Like, how am I going to shoot it exactly? What are the different poses I'm going to use exactly? Etc. What's going to happen is you're just not going to start. You won't start because you'll get anxiety over it. And on top of that, if you get bogged down in that, like, there's a clarity that comes from having the clay in your hands. Imagine I give you a wad of clay and then I say, okay, figure out the sculpture you're going to make in your head. It's really hard. But if the clay is in your hand, you start knowing how to work with it, and it's step by step, and eventually it forms itself into something, right? And I think photography is the same. You got to get your hands on the camera. You got to just shoot. Okay. I have to go to raw files now because not everything's showing up. So I'm not the most organized person in the world. You guys can see some, like, how many attempts it took to get some of the images. Like this guy who's a kung fu fighter. It's a lot of photographers. I believe he is a lawyer, but also like a rancher, which is pretty cool. Alright guys, any event photography questions? I'm going to scroll a little faster. I think this guy's an architect right on the left here. And I think she was in like fashion school. Is that a design? What do you call fashion school? This woman was on the national team for boxing in Mexico. Sometimes when I'd be photographing someone, I'd get the shot almost immediately, you know? Sometimes like I wouldn't, and I would keep shooting. I'd explore until I feel like I got it, and I'd usually know I got it. Like, that's the image I want. Like, I think when I got this image, I knew that was the image I wanted. I might have still shot a little bit more, but so sometimes someone sits for me. I immediately, this guy was infamous for eating like fast food, but incredibly fit too, so weird. But yeah, usually sometimes I would get the shot immediately, and I'm like, we're good, we're good. And sometimes I would need time, I'd need time to explore it. I'd want to find something that was unique to them. I'd want it to like, I wouldn't want it to look cookie cutter. Another dentist. Looking back, I'm starting to miss doing this, I got to travel around and meet people, and everyone was so kind, like really like took me in. Like I felt so welcome everywhere, every gym I went to, mostly. It's my friend Itzel who invited me over to Mexico, where her husband and her own a gym. It was pretty cool. It's a gym on top of their apartment, like it's like built in. Okay, we saw these. Let me jump ahead. These, I have the edited files somewhere, but in this folder they're not there. But I shot these in London. It was a challenge because I couldn't bring my backdrop, and I used a specific backdrop. But luckily the gym had padded walls that were almost the exact same color, and so that's how I shot these. These are not the edited versions of the files. You're seeing like the raw files. That's the owner of the gym, or the instructor. And we saw those. Alright, that's it for the People Who Train project. I think that this may be the last portrait I ever shot. Bree's an interesting person as well. Everyone was so Oh boy. So audio was out. I hope not very long. So, still waiting. Okay, a minute of audio out. There was a question I got on another channel. Another video in the comments about strobe that I'll start with answering, and then if you guys have other questions, let me know. I'll start with that one, let the delay catch up. You guys can let me know what your questions are. In the meanwhile, I'm gonna find something else to share with you guys. in the meanwhile, so we're not looking at the same image, I'll just play the Making Bricks series again because it's going to be quick. Let's see if I can get the slideshow to properly play. Let's see. So I was asked to clarify how I use strobe, and I want to just I've talked about it on my channel before, and I don't do this as a way of saying, oh, I don't want to answer your question, but I also I do recommend just watching some of the videos I've done on it, so that way I can kind of see if I did a thorough job of explaining, and then you can tell me what I missed. But when it comes to strobe, yes, I shoot TTL, and TTL is through the lens. It's basically auto for flash. I don't shoot manual. I don't think manual is really feasible to shoot at a live event because you're going to have to tinker with it constantly. And I shoot in manual, so I'm already tinkering with my ISO, my shutter, and my aperture. If I want to now then also tinker with the manual output of my flash, I think that's going to hit my limit. And I don't think it's necessary, because while I enjoy the experience of shooting in manual, I find it like I can adapt really fast with it, but I don't think the thing is that TTL does such a good job that I don't see any benefit of using it in manual. And exposure compensation is essentially giving you manual control over your flash. So, as I've said before, when it comes to, looks like the slideshow's not showing. This is so annoying. As I've said, when it comes to flash, sorry, I got thrown off having to deal with like juggling Lightroom and my streaming software and stuff. Okay, I'm gonna start over. So yes, I like shooting in manual. When I have a flash, if it's in TTL, I only have to worry about my manual control, and my flash will constantly properly expose based on the light it's receiving that's bouncing off of the subject and back to the camera. That said, I'm always tinkering with my flash, and I'm tinkering with it by adjusting its compensation level. I'm usually at a negative compensation, and once in a while I'm at a positive compensation. Just like your camera, your flash is basically exposing under the assumption that what it's photographing is a midtone or a middle gray. And therefore, when you photograph something really white, it ends up being too gray. It's going to be a middle gray. If you photograph something black, it ends up being too gray, also a middle gray. It doesn't know what it's photographing, but you do. And so what you can do is shoot in TTL, and you just constantly adjust. If you're not enjoying the results you're getting from TTL, it's probably because you're not using exposure compensation enough. And exposure compensation is going to give you that kind of adjustment you need. So I don't see any benefit to shooting in manual. The only time I could really, I'll tell you when I do use it, and then I'll talk about when I could theoretically imagine using it. I use it when I am photographing detail shots and then I want to backlight them, add some rim light. And so usually I still shoot TTL with my key light, which is my main light, and then my second light, I'm positioning it behind an item, behind an object, a detail. I'm zooming in with it so that it has a more controlled cascade of light. You can do that with your flash without adding a grid. A grid would give it more focus, of course, but you don't need that. And then I'll point it toward me, and then I find that when I rim light, that my TTL system gets completely thrown off. It doesn't know what it's doing. So I will then put that secondary rim light in manual, and then I will manually adjust it. And that works. And that works because when I'm shooting in that way, I have all the time in the world. But when I'm photographing an event and I'm zooming in and out, then every time I zoom in and out, I'm changing how far away my subject is, of course, and I have to constantly adjust my manual control. But when I'm in TTL, it's going to adjust for me. So I hope that makes sense. So obviously if you're shooting with the prime, there's going to be more consistency in how far away your subject matter is from you, but that's still going to be an issue. That's still definitely going to be an issue. One situation I could imagine using manual in without detail shots would be like maybe if you're shooting the same kind of wide angle shots on a dance floor and you're always about 5 feet from someone, you could do that. Especially if your flash, especially or specifically if your flash is on camera and pointed at your subject using like any type of diffusion is fine. But if you're bouncing the light, you might be farther from the wall than you were from one shot to the other, and it wouldn't really work. So I am not a big fan of shooting flash manually. I don't think it's practical, which might sound strange because I'm completely all in on manual photography in general. I do that at least 90% of the time, but flash is a little bit different. Okay, any other questions before I go? I promised myself maybe I'd keep this one a little shorter. Pick up the length on Monday. This is like my oldest work. While you guys figure out if you have any questions, like some of the first action type photos I took ever. And you can see, well, it's kind of hard to tell. These were with my 5D Classic. I probably just bought it. And getting action shots in a low lit environment was so hard with that camera. Like ISO 800, things fell apart. Ugh, awful editing. Here, wedding and events. This is the very, very, very first wedding I ever shot. Terrible. But good enough that I was able to land a gig as a second shooter. You know, like I was just like what I saw online probably. Like what most of us do. But ultimately you want to find your own creative vision. You know, this is the very, very first wedding I ever shot. Although I still love this image. I still love it. I thought I caught something here. All right, guys. I'm going to wrap it up then. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate all of you. Again, thank you if you're one of my Patreon supporters. I really, really appreciate that. Monday, I will be back. I am going to stream every day on the weekdays, and I will have different topics going forward. Fighting off an illness was kind of difficult for me to plan these ahead of time because I was spending all my time on other things I had to get done and trying to like recuperate in bed and whatnot, so I couldn't do much advanced planning. But again, we're going to talk philosophy, we're going to talk specific camera settings, we'll talk gear. I'm going to pick a different topic or a different job to share with you every live stream. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you all again.